welcome to another episode of Epic Generation Science Adventure. Our science discovery continues as we learn about the latest work of scientists from the Defence Research and Development Canada, which keeps Canadians safe. Last time we learned a lot about satellites and space debris, but this time we're going to learn about another interesting field called human factors.
Human factors, the science of how humans interact with technology. Sounds interesting, right? Well, today we feature a defense scientist at the DRDC Toronto Research Centre, whose research uses both psychology and engineering to look at the design of technology. One example of his work is examining how people trust advanced robots and autonomous systems. Now I'm curious. Let's meet our field expert, Dr. Geoffrey Ho!
Hi everyone. Hope everyone's doing great. So I'm going to talk to you about something a little bit different. It's a science that's not very well known. It's called human factors. And we'll talk about human factors in defense and specifically about how it helps keep everybody safe. We're located around Shepherd West Station in the Downsview area. And we're co-located with another military branch. It's called the Canadian Forces Environmental Medicine Establishment. And together we're about 200 people. About 60 people there are military. The rest of us are scientists and technologists, but we all specialize, the entire building specializes in the human sciences. So there's people who specialize in medicine, physiology, psychology, and then people like me who do human factors work. So one of the cool things that I don't know if a lot of people know is DRDC was actually started in Toronto in 1939, and the founder is Sir Frederick Banting. I wanted to ask, does anyone know that name and know who he is?
Oh, I think I know about him. Isn't he the one who co-discovered insulin to treat diabetes?
Sir Frederick Banting is probably Canada's most famous and decorated scientist of all time. He and his colleague discovered insulin, which is used to treat diabetes. So he basically saved hundreds and thousands of people ever since with his discovery. And he won the Nobel Prize for it, one of the most prestigious awards you can win in science. And not many, well, we had one recently, but not many Canadians had that distinguished opportunity to be a Nobel laureate. And he became one of them. So it's a great piece of history for DRDC. What's human factors? It's really a multidiscipline science. It's a science of how people use and interact with technology. And our goal is to optimize technology so it optimizes human performance, it reduces human error, and improves health and safety and habitability. And it's really a combination of things like psychology, engineering, physiology, anthropology, industrial design, and human-computer interaction. So you can usually study each one of these at a Canadian school. Not many of our schools right now offer things in human factors. We have a couple of universities that do, but by and large, most human factors is studied in Europe or in the US, and Canada has a small group of human factor scientists. So I'm a very lucky few that actually study this field.
Hey, Marie, did you know that human factors is used in aviation, transportation, and medicine to reduce human error?
Really? I don't get it. What do you mean reducing human error?
Well, anyone can make mistakes, but sometimes those mistakes can cause bad things to happen, like accidents. So human factors like Dr. Ho study these types of things and look for ways to prevent human errors from happening.
Oh, that's nice. Makes me feel a lot more safer.
Exactly. Let's find out more from Dr. Ho.
I wanted to give you a really cool story about human factors and how it started and also how it contributes to safety. So back in World War II, this plane, it was a bomber. It's the Boeing B-17, and it had a lot of crashes. and it always crashed, or it tended to crash on the runway during landing. And after investigating, nothing was wrong with the plane. So it was always attributed to human error. But, so many pilots, we're talking about hundreds of crashes that were happening. And it's like, why are all these pilots making human errors? So the military asked a specific doctor. He was a psychologist. His name was Alphonse Chapanis. And he became the pioneer of human factors work. He was asked to investigate the human error. And when he studied the cockpit of the B-17, he noticed that the landing gear and the flaps were positioned side by side, and they were identical switches that were close in proximity. So his thought was that these pilots, in the stress of war, after long hours, as they were landing, they probably hit the wrong switch and they were raising their flaps instead of lowering their landing gear. So his solution was very simple. The landing gear, think of a wheel. Let's put a little ball on it. So all he did was he stuck a ball on the landing gear. And what do you know? All of the human error disappeared. All of those crashes disappeared, and highlighted the importance of a very simple design solution to reduce human error. And that's kind of how human factors kind of started. And the cool thing is that design, the picture on the bottom there is a modern cockpit, and I highlighted and made big the landing gear. And you can see that round wheel, that's the standard design for landing gear levers ever since that discovery. So it's a really cool way to keep people safe just by simply changing something that's very simple. So human factors can also be used in transportation. So in the early 1990s, a lot of human factors were really, really studying this whole idea of people driving with cell phones, because cell phones just started to become popular at that point. But there was no law against using a cell phone while driving. But us human factor scientists, we were studying this and going, wow, this is a really, really bad idea. In the labs, people were having accidents, people were swerving around everywhere, they weren't braking fast enough. And we knew from all of the laboratory studies that this was really bad. It took almost about 10 years before the governments decided to say, okay, we better put some laws in place to curb this. And everybody probably has seen people talking on their phones while driving. Tell your parents, don't do this. Very bad idea. You could get into a bad accident if you talk on the cell phone. Human factors also been applied to things like the readability of traffic signs. So this really happens when you're in a foreign country and you're not familiar with the signs. So I put some signs here from, I think it's from Europe at the bottom here. If you take a look at these signs, can you make sense of what they might mean? I took a look and I really don't know. But, traffic signs have to be universal. You have to drive by and at a very quick glance, understand what it's trying to tell you. You depend on the person to know the language that the sign is in. So the picture has to really tell 1,000 words really fast. And you'll find that a lot of traffic signs are quite uninterpretable. And human factor scientists take a lot of time to try to make sure those signs are as readable and understandable as possible. So human factors can also be used in medicine, and it's actually very well regulated in the medical device industry to make sure that it's properly used by the doctors and nurses and practitioners, but also by the patients. So because a lot of these devices come home, and now you're asking someone with no medical background to use this device to help keep them safe. So they're very strongly regulated. And human factors has also been used in operating rooms, looking at medical procedures to see whether the medical teams can actually reduce their errors by using simple things in their design process to reduce those medical errors that we all hear about. That is just like very tragic when something gets left behind in someone's body, or, they operated on the wrong person or on the wrong leg or something like that. You definitely don't want that. And that's where human factors can come in. So at DRDC, that's basically what I do. I apply human factors research for the Canadian Armed Forces. That's the proper name for the Canadian military. And usually we apply it to military equipment, new equipment that comes in. but also we look at emerging technologies that might be used down the line 10, 15, 20 years from now, and see whether it might be a good fit for our military. So in terms of safety, a lot of things I did directly contribute to safety because, for instance, I work on safety equipment. For the airplane that you see in this picture, we redesigned the alarm system on that plane to make sure that it was usable for the air crew. But also, sometimes we're just making sure the equipment really meets the needs of the soldier or the aviator or the sailor so that they can be safe when they perform their job. But in a way, we're really contributing to the overall safety of Canada because the Canadian Armed Forces, that's what their job. Their job is to keep us safe, right? So in some ways, I feel like our job is keeping everybody safe because we're really helping the military in a very important way.
Wow, all I can say is that it's really cool to know that human factors play an important role in keeping us safe.
Speaking of cool, Dr. Ho, can you tell us what makes your job cool?
Growing up, I was a huge comic book fan. And Wolverine was definitely one of my favorite characters. And it was extremely cool because he was Canadian. And if you read his origin story, not only was he Canadian, he got his awesome claws because the Canadian military, scientists from the Canadian military experimented on him and built these awesome claws on him. And now I realize I'm one of those crazy scientists. So the coolest thing I always tell kids is that I'm one of these guys who does things like building Wolverines. We never do something so unethical, or we would never do anything so irresponsible, but we're trying to make people, soldiers, and the people who work in the military do a lot more effective. So that's the first thing that I thought was really cool about my job, is just knowing that I'm kind of related to this comic book hero that I had when I was a kid. The second thing I would say is cool experiences. So because I get to work with the people that use the technology, almost all of my projects, I get sent on missions with the people I work with. So I've done infantry training. I've had to learn how to fire a rifle. I've been on a warship and I've sailed on the warship before. I've watched people operate drones. I've flown in helicopters and sat in jet fighters, and just things that as a kid I never imagined I would ever do. And even people in the military, they usually do their one thing. They're infantry soldiers, they're sailors, and they get to do their one thing for the rest of their life. I get to do all of those things a little bit at a time, and I'm never in danger when I do it. So I get the best of all worlds that way. So that's really another really good aspect of my job. A third part of my job, and Dawn said it too, we travel. In some of the best places I've gotten to travel, I've pictured here. So on the top right there, you see a picture of Prague, one of the most beautiful cities in the world. The picture with this long street, some of you guys might look at it and say, wow, that really looks like something straight out of Harry Potter. Well, that's because this street actually influenced the design of Diagon Alley in Harry Potter, and this is in the UK. And then recently, I wound up in the middle of a desert in the USA, and off in the distance, I could see wild horses and wild donkeys. And so my job really takes me to some really, really interesting places. Again, not places that I may typically go to if I were just vacationing. So it's really given me an opportunity to just see different things. I should also say, some of my friends or colleagues at work have gone to Afghanistan during the war to work with the soldiers there. Other of my friends have gone to the Arctic and have stayed weeks up north, and literally experiencing that cold weather, but also seeing really cool things like the Arctic wolves and so forth. So some really, really neat experiences in that way. And I think the last part I would say is that a cool part of my job is I know I'm really helping Canada. I'm really helping the people who are really serving Canada and trying to keep it safe and secure. And we're doing things that are really, really important to make sure that these people can keep all of us safe. And I think that's a really, really cool aspect of our job, is that we know we're doing something that's really important for all of us. Growing up, I wanted to be a counselor or to be a therapist. So I studied psychology at the University of Toronto. But as I kind of got through the program, that interest in counseling kind of faded, and I went to graduate school in the University of Calgary. And there I met a human factors professor, and he introduced me to human factors. And that was a really good fit for me because I was kind of a geek. I was really into like computer things already and technology already. So the fit between technology and psychology really, really resonated with me. And I wound up doing my PhD in human factors. And after that, I wound up working in a company called Honeywell. You guys may have heard that. It might be one of the thermostats in your house or in a building that you might know. That's what they're really popular for. But they do a lot of other cool things. So I got to work on medical devices, on home automation, on thermostats, and even on big oil and gas companies and their big control room systems. I was able to do human factors work on that. So that was another thing that was really cool.
Standing. Kneeling.
So this is the CanLeap system. And this shows some of the work that we do with soldiers. This is not my research, but there's an obstacle course at DRDC. This one is set in a hockey rink, as you can see, but we have the same course at DRDC. And what we try to look at is how the equipment works on soldiers. Is it going to work for them? Is it too heavy? Is it going to make them tired? Is it causing them pain and discomfort? So we run them through these courses, and we make them do things that they would normally have to do or be prepared to do, including running through small windows, dragging a body potentially, kneeling down, and after doing all that, trying to fire their weapon accurately. So we measure all of that to make sure that they're performing to the best they can under a very, very difficult circumstance. And, as someone, I'm not a big person myself. I've worn all of this equipment. It is extremely heavy.
Dr. Ho, what are some activities that we can do to be aware of human factors around us?
Human factors is all around us. It's something that all of us can do because we're all users of technology. But the next time you pick up a toy or a video game or a new app, or you want to just sit in the passenger side of your parents' car, play around with the controls and think about how it's being used. Try doing what that soldier was doing. The next time you're on the playground, try swinging on the monkey bars, and now try to put a light backpack on you and get someone to spot you, because it can be a little bit dangerous. But think about how fast you are. Did you fall? What could you do maybe to improve your performance? Or what are some of the things that could affect your performance as well when you're doing those monkey bars? Or, next time you're in a car, try to look at the road signs, especially if you're traveling somewhere that's new. Can you read them when you're going fast? Do they make sense to you? Those are those simple little things that you can think about how human factors work. And the more you do this, the more you're going to realize that a lot of things in this world are designed in a way that doesn't really make sense. And it could be designed a lot better to help reduce those human errors, and to help us keep us safer. And so as you grow up and look at things, keep on thinking about human factors and how you may one day influence the way technology works, because you can build something better that everybody can use, not just a small group of people or something like that.
So, Dr. Ho, how does your projects get approved by the government?
Good question. Usually the military asks people in our organization at DRDC to focus on certain problems. And then the people in our organization then filter it down to people like me to say, hey, the military is having this problem. Can human factors help in this particular way? So for instance, drones and robotics is a big topic right now. And so a lot of human factors work is dedicated to looking at, can humans work with robotics in a seamless way, or is it going to be very clunky and so forth? And if it's very clunky, how can we help soldiers work with robots a little bit better? So it's usually the military helps us define what we need to look at.
Hey, Marie, what are you doing?
Oh, hey, I'm just trying to build something without the instructions, but it's really confusing.
Of course, that's exactly what Dr. Ho is talking about. Sometimes the things around us are not designed in ways that make sense. So I'd say let's keep observing, and maybe someday, some of us can go into the field of human factors and keep everyone safe like Dr. Ho.
Well, it's been fun learning with you. I hope to see you again in another episode of Epic Generation Science Adventure. Bye!